Hello, everyone. Good evening and a very warm welcome to this riveting conversation on a pertinent topic, the future of HR, winning by democratizing. This webinar is brought to you by ETHR World and Darwin Box. Organizations can create a sense of responsibility amongst the leadership to power the human capital, freeing up HR professionals to take up strategic duties. This democratization of HR and its different processes is no longer a good to have, but is a necessary condition for companies to attract, retain, and enable their employees, their most valuable resource. We are standing on the cusp of a revolution in talent management, where the future of HR is about leveraging technology to enable access to right information, right permissions, and tools to the managers. We welcome this era of manager as a new HR. We have the who's and who of the industry who will be helping us understand this topic. They will be broadening our perspective and sharing insights on this topic. Please join me in welcoming Reena Tyagi, CHRO Manipal Cigna Health Insurance, Praveen Menon, CPO India First Life Insurance, Sankalp Mohanty, Partner Human Capital Consulting Deloitte India, and Rohit Chenamaneni, co-founder Darwin Box. Rohit will also be moderating this session. Before I leave this table, viewers, I would like to welcome you once more. Please make this session very interactive. Keep sharing your thoughts and questions. The panel here will take your questions right from the beginning of the session. So do not wait till the end to share your questions. You can see a Q&A tab on your screen. Please use that tab to engage with the panel. At the end of 1 hour, we want you to walk away with great takeaways and broadening your knowledge on this topic. Rohit, the floor is all yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pooja, for the introduction. You pronounced my name right, so yeah, I have to give it to you for doing it for the first time. What we'll do is I have a few slides that'll give you context on the session, and I'll just take 5 minutes probably, and I'll just share my screen to do that. So, hi everyone, good evening. My name is Rohit. I'm one of the founders of Darwin Box. For folks who don't know Darwin Box, here's a quick intro. We are one of the fastest growing HCM technology platforms in the world, the fastest growing in Asia. We're the most preferred HCM solution by APAC. We have 600 plus clients, more than 1 million users on the platform. So do want to learn as much as all of you in this panel in terms of what we can do for the future of HR in terms of technology. We've entered or debuted on the Magic Quadrant. This is some news that came in last week, so quite excited about that. I think in terms of driving better ROIs for our customers, ensuring all the technology and innovation vision of HR leaders are realized. That's our ambition, and this is something that we're quite proud of. Quickly jumping into the topic that we have, and we're seeing a lot of change, right? And by no small means this is happening today in today's world. You're looking at organizations which used to be traditional setups where you had complex matrix structures, and organizations are very, very people-centric, right? To moving to a more connected, more remote, more hybrid kind of context, right? Changing cultural values across generations and getting more data-driven as organizations. In this context, we are looking at how the future for HR is changing, right? And the expectations from HR leaders is increasing, right? We're today expected to provide support, take stand, be flexible on policies, ensure employee privacy, and bridge the skill gap in this ever-changing need for skills in this world. So with that, I do want to introduce our topic, talking about the future of HR and how democratization is happening in the best place. And would definitely call upon maybe Praveen, maybe we'll start with you. What in your view is the vision for future of HR? What do you think are the big changes that are coming up? And we'll start from there and then get into the specifics and hopefully get some great examples from all of you that everybody can take away. in terms of actionables?
Sure. Thank you, Rohit, and good evening, everybody. Good evening, my panel members. Good thanks to everyone, entire audience. So my view would be this, Rohit. Okay, it's actually time to move from something like an atomistic approach to a holistic one. When I'm saying that, what I mean is the fact that each function in an organization should be able to take ownership and accountability instead of just relying on a COE. For example, functions like learning and talent management should be driven by the respective functions instead of it just get driven by the HR. Now, so the second question is that if that is the case, then would you create, let's assume, HR in finance, or would you create finance in operations, etc.? And the answer is no, because you would still require a holistic view as far as the organization is concerned. You would still require an expert and expertise to have brought onto the table, and thereafter, managing this entire holistic view through the function is something which I call it as an holistic approach, which is what I think organizations have understood now, and more and more organizations are actually approaching this in that manner. The second would be the organization structure would be needs to be redesigned in such a way that go-to-market time is reduced, right? Organizations are now thinking that how can they be very close to the customers, and COVID world has actually preponed many things today, right? And India being a digital savvy country, a lot many things would be saying that how do you reach to a customer maybe through a digital medium, instead of the erstwhile thought process of reaching a customer through a brick and mortar model or a physical connect, right? And the HR function completely needs to get aligned to this approach. Then we are also talking about, be it Generation Y, Generation Z, we are also talking about gig economies now coming through, which essentially means that the entire erstwhile hierarchical structure has to now migrate to something called holacracy structure, right? Because holacracy actually removes the traditional approach. It actually helps employees to kind of self-organize, to make sure that their potential best is brought onto the table. There are no impediments, and it is kind of getting aligned to the company goals. So organizations, I think world over, especially the progressive organizations, have understood these aspects, and they are moving away from traditional hierarchy or and moving towards holacracy structure. Also, today, one of the challenges that organizations are facing would be the fact that how do you communicate this to people? I mean, there may be a lot of things that would be happening in the background, but on ground, when it comes to the last mile employee, the employee may not be onboarded because the communication may not be really happening the way it should happen. And that's where, especially organizations like ours, have made it a point that the communication should be periodic. It should be also top driven at times. It should be crystal clear, crisp, so that everybody is aware that where organization is heading to, what are the goals, what are the challenges, so that everybody can get into the scheme of things and you have an effective buy-in from everybody. This, I think, are some of the things which a future HR will be intending to do, some of the challenges that they will have to overcome. And from there, a post-COVID world, which everybody is assuming that it would be one type. Nobody exactly knows that how that COVID world is going to be. But if you ask my take, it would be best of pre-COVID and during COVID, which is going to be the post-COVID. And that's where I think HR has to make sure that the organization becomes agile and employees are agile to take up the unknown, which is yet to happen, yet to come. So those would be my opening comments.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Praveen. Reena, anything specific you want to add in terms of the future of HR that could change from now?
Yeah, Rohit, definitely. I have a couple of points which are there in my mind. And really taking from what Praveen said, right? We're all talking about changing role of HR in today's time and specific context to post-pandemic. But frankly, that new role of HR, and as Praveen said, it started pre-COVID, right? So the transition of HR being a strategic partner in business, it started some time back, and we've been talking of a VUCA world long time back, right? So it started from there. So for me, future of HR really lies that HR obviously has started moving from being transactional and moved in most of the organizations to being partner, but really being a strategic advisor to the CEO, the board, the CXOs, right? Apart from, and I'll come to the people, but really, I think another important role which HR leaders today have to play is leading change. VUCA is a topic which is a very old one now. Change is happening at a much faster rate, really, right? And it is a constant. So really, HR has to be a change leader. HR leaders have to be change leaders where they are not reacting to change, but preempting change and being able to devise strategies which will allow organizations to be able to handle that change in a better way. And not just handle the change, really like take up the opportunities which that change is providing, and as business being able to capitalize on those opportunities. I think one is that. Second, I was reading an employee experience. I think we've been really talking about, but I think now employee experience has become a much wider subject, apart from obviously having a very consistent employee experience in terms of processes, etc. Employee experience today, and I was reading a very interesting article which really talked about that employee experience is social experience plus work, which is the organization experience and work experience. So it is a combination of three. So when we talk of social experience, what kind of networking, what kind of relationships are people forming in the organization, that becomes very critical. What is the kind of collaborative environment? What is the kind of social environment, communities that you're providing? So HR will have to play a very strong role there. Obviously, the work experience, which we talk about, clarity on roles. Praveen spoke about the structure changing to the demands of what we truly want, providing flexibility, right? So that really is the work experience. And then third comes the organization experience, where we're talking about the role of technology. We are talking about the role of what is the sense of belongingness that people have to the organization or to the larger purpose of the organization. And third, obviously, I think which has become so important post-pandemic is safety. And we've been reading so much that people now, in terms of the proposition that organizations have to offer to the employees, mental and physical or health and wellness. So safety from those perspectives has become a critical proposition for employees to choose where do they want to be. So I think HR has to play a role there. Third, again, Praveen touched upon building an employee value proposition, which is very strong and appealing. And we all today have multi-generational employee workforce, right? And things which used to appeal to, for example, I was a part of the organization, possibly I started means I was a part of the organization with just 2 people. And today I really look at it, the employee value proposition we created, is it the same value proposition that I need to look at today? Because the entire demographic of the organization is changing slowly. So how do we appeal to multi-generational demographics of the organization is another important one. And fourth and the last point is this hybrid working, right? Which possibly, and Praveen knows that in insurance, possibly this was something which would be really taken very lightly or made fun of if we spoke about a couple of years back. But even insurance industry today is so open, and we are really looking at opportunity. We as an organization, Manipal Cigna, have actually launched a hybrid working model where almost 35% of our people are today working from home, and it was unthinkable 2 years back. So what are the things we need to look at in those environments? Build trusting relationships. So the relationships have to be much stronger. Build engagement models. Today we have virtual business models. So how do you engage with people who don't even have a manager with them in that location, who are single people placed at different locations? So how do you build that sense of belongingness, purpose, passion in a person who's not connected? So their technology plays a different role. So, and obviously then technology, how do you enable your managers, then this entire topic of democratization. So really, I think HR's role is completely, I would say, is making a complete turn. The process started a few years back. It has got expedited because of the pandemic. And I think we're on the right path as far as that is concerned.
Absolutely, Reena and Praveen. I think super valid points, and the 3-4 themes both of you are alluded to, right? In terms of moving from operational to strategic, talking about communication across agility, and Praveen spoke about this, right? Agility. How do we make sure? And we see the most successful organizations globally. A big differentiating factor becoming agility, right? And how does the whole
Yes.
organization align to that to make that agility happen? And I think I think that leads to how does HR become agile and how does it enable, and that's where the democratization part comes in. And Sankalp, I'll come to you here in terms of maybe your thoughts on what is democratization, what could be broad enablers for democratization according to you in the future vision for HR.
Sure. Hey, thanks, Rohit. Hi, everyone. Look, the short answer to the question of what does democratization of HR look like will mean that we will have true democratization of HR when we stop seeing HR as a function, but we see it as a discipline. We stop pointing to a group of HR professionals and saying you own the employee experience. And as managers, everyone sort of takes accountability and accepts that we have joint responsibility for the employee experience, right? On a lighter note, imagine an organization where everybody wears these really nice black t-shirts which have hashtag I am HR written on them, right? But okay, but on a more serious note, let's explore that so much, right? The future of work is changing more rapidly than ever before. I think fundamentally the big difference in the last year or so has been that there's been a change from focusing on just optimization to focusing much more on humanization. And I think most of our panelists also sort of mentioned that, right? Not just about doing more with less, but also a lot about how do we make things better for the people that we have. And employees expect this, right? They expect an employee experience which is personalized, which covers for their mental health, physical health, which helps them be the best version of themselves that they can be. Which is also on par with the kind of experiences that they have as consumers of broader products and services and things like that, right? Now, this has significant demands for HR. And the way to respond to that is to place the employee at the center, design experiences around them, and co-opt the larger environment towards actually bringing these experiences to life or delivering the employee experience, right? So on the one hand, it's about co-opting the larger ecosystem towards taking accountability. On the other hand, it's also about freeing up space and bandwidth to be able to do some of the more strategic elements which Praveen and Reena spoke about, right? So true democratization of HR, I think, will require 2 or 3 things, right? From an HR perspective, I think roles will need to become much more outcome focused. But most critically, I think managers, it'll take managers to take greater acceptance and accountability that they own the delivery of the employee experience, right? And they need to take greater responsibility for building a culture of empathy, providing the coaching and the mentoring that colleagues need, building teams, showcasing success, all of the other sort of people responsible. I think that's very, very critical. And I think we will also need greater, more widespread, more effective use of technology to enable all of this. Right? I mean, if you look at the tech ecosystem today, sometimes it can be fragmented, right? How do we bring that together towards providing a more unified experience? So I think those would be some of my thoughts in terms of what democratization of HR might actually look like.
Absolutely, Sankalp. And Praveen, Reena, if you can bring some of this to life with 1 or 2 examples. And there is a question which is pertinent as well from what Sankalp had mentioned, right? And especially on the L&D function and L&D initiative, right? Are there new sets of trainings that are needed in this new context, right? Of democratization for the employees or the managers, which we were not doing before? Are there anything specific like that they should take up as initiative? This is a question from Chayan. Right. So if one of your examples has that, we could cover that, or maybe once you have your example, you could also talk about this.
Means I can talk about the recent automation that we went through. And by the way, we've used Ravenbox, so we kind of implemented it beginning of this year. And I can tell you, means it's been a process, right? So first, and I'll touch upon L&D possibly later, but really telling that it's a change. And why we have had a very successful implementation. And today we decided to actually move to Darwinbox and launch, we called it My Manipal Signa, the portal, even before the pandemic started. But I am so glad that we launched it, because when the pandemic came and we were all working from home, having HR processes which were giving a very consistent experience and an ability to engage and engage with an employee, as I said, who was sitting in a corner of the country, where even during non-pandemic times one would not travel so much, right? So that was very, very important, but it was a change, right? So you have to, for example, we started the process with reviewing our processes, and I can tell you, when we as a team really looked at our workflows, looked at our processes, we had to really look at them very differently, right? So saying that if today if we are looking at empowering managers, and having that dialogue in the team was not an easy one, because we were suddenly now saying that the managers are empowered to take these calls, right? So whether it is a call on attendance, whether it is, and I'm talking about some very basic things, I'm not even going further, about decisions on leaves, about decision on whether, how's the check-in discussion going. We are not monitoring that, look at goals, tick mark. We said that do a check-in, and do a check-in which really captures the essence of the dialogue that you've had. Because the thing that we're talking about in our performance management system is around connect for growth. So the idea of the dialogue is to energize your team members, is to ensure that the employee and the manager, when they come out of the discussion, they're coming in a very rewarding state of mind, right? Rather than, so those are some of the things and the dialogues that we did. So we spent a lot of time getting a buy-in from the managers, and starting from the top, right? Starting from the leadership, then going to the managers below. And these were some very interesting conversations. But once we had the buy-in on the processes, then it was a cakewalk. Then it was only about execution and ensuring that we had execution excellence there. But I think very critical in this kind of a change is reviewing your processes, which might sound very transactional at some point of time, that we want to do big strategic things, but really looking at processes which give consistent employee experience and empower the managers is very, very critical. Second, managing it as a big change is something. And I remember some of my team members having, I remember one of the very simple things that we were launching was around the attendance module in My Manipal Signa. And suddenly my team, why are you putting in so much of time? I said, because I know that as managers, what's in it for me? That's the most important thing for them at this point of time. So if we get that right, the confidence in the system will be, and we spent a lot of time getting buy-in, building those processes, ensuring that it was executed very well. And then we had it, because now today people come and give the thumbs up that your HR system automation is one of the best. You're doing, so you have a buy-in, and anything we launch on My Manipal Signa now is really taken up with open arms, and there's trust around it. So that's there. I think in terms of learning and development, we are really now moving to almost a hybrid kind of a learning, which was there earlier too. But frankly, for us, it is mostly now online. We are trying to create a resource room for our L&D portal, where we have our competencies which are defined. So create a resource room wherein an employee, at his own convenience, at his own discretion, can really go to the resource room and say, these are the things which are more relevant for me. So again,
any new courses, Reena, just to specific question, any new courses you introduced post-pandemic in terms of learning?
So one obviously, and which I think a lot of people did, was around virtual managers, right? So that's something that we have. But I can also tell you that we launched a competency called Digital Mindset 2 years back. And that time when we were framing the competency, I was pushed back quite a bit that digital mindset is not really a competency. But, I and the leadership team was very clear that if you are going through a digital transformation, digital mindset, I said, be it possibly in your books, it is not a competency, but I do want to put it. And really, I think it came in handy because as a part of that digital mindset, we are talking about curiosity, we are talking about adapting to change, you're talking about obviously your analytical skills. So we introduced that, and we have some programs around digital mindset that we are launching in this resource room.
Praveen, I think specific question again on any specific examples that you've seen in terms of these enablers that you're trying out, and maybe you could run us through one of them.
So I was hearing very keenly what Reena had to say. I mean, like fantastic that some of those initiatives that what she mentioned was taken about a couple of years back, and it is actually seeing the light of the day, for her today and her organization. For me also, democratization may not be just restricted in making something accessible to everyone, but it should be available to everybody whenever required, right? And at times, organizations would be creating policies, processes, etc. But employees may not be really aware of it, how to use it, etc. And so, to a certain extent, it may die a natural death. So the organization should be actually focusing on creating what is required, then educating employees on the availability of it, and then thereafter usage, etc. What we have done is that, what I do is that we look at what we are offering to the customer. Now, these days, we are talking about hyper-personalization, offerings to the customer, right? Because every customer would be very different from each other. And, personalization has gone to the next level of hyper-personalization. Because, of course, whether we like it or not, everything to a certain extent gets compared with Amazons, Flipkarts, Mintras of this world. And the so-called experience that the consumers enjoy or experience it there, everybody would expect every organization to provide them with those kind of experiences. So I think organizations are moving towards hyper-personalization. So we looked at it at India First Life also. So one of the examples that I can quote, Rohit, is that especially in learning and development, we launched something called as a self-paced learning journey. Okay, now, so that's just a term that we are using at India First Life. But what essentially it means is the fact that we actually, support our sales force. Of course, they get tracked on the output, but some point in time, the sales force used to come back to us and say that, okay, you tell us that how do we, enhance our performance. So we thereafter came out with a lot of input parameters. So we said that, okay, these are some of the input parameters. You need to be regimented. If you actually follow these parameters, there are chances that you will be highly successful as a sales guy. And, so we kind of insisted this couple of years back. We realized that, when it comes to employees, there should be effective buy-in more than imposing all of these things onto them. So this year, financial year 22, beginning May, what we said is that we will actually track you to your input parameters at a base level, right? In case if you have not, we are not really looking at the output, but we are looking at input. In case if you're not achieved those base parameters in terms of the input, then automatically there will be a learning module which is curated for that particular parameter, which will get triggered off. Okay, because we have an e-learning system, etc. So we said that one size doesn't fit all. So different people at different times, based on, there are some more than 10 input parameters that we have crystallized for our sales guys. So depending upon their performance, these modules actually trigger, and once the module is triggered, the person has to actually complete that modules. We expect that this will make the person understand that what are the things that the person is supposed to do and which possibly is not happening. It kind of reinforces some of the activities that the person has to do. It helps in terms of the productivity of an individual. And in case if the parameters are well taken care of in terms of the benchmark, the module doesn't trigger off at all. So, so it is kind of something that we have done, and we are already seeing some green shoots of that, because it is about 5 months that we have launched it. But suddenly we see that the productivity of our employees have actually gone up as compared to that of, before launching of the module. So again, this is what we call it as hyper democratization. Exactly what is required by an employee is being offered, which is very, very curated, and it is offered through a platform so that it reaches the last mile and the employee can actually, log into the system and complete it as and when he or she has a time. Of course, we will put some broad parameters in terms of before what date the employee has to complete it, etc. But this is something which came through a thought of hyper personalization that we offer to the customer, bringing it back to what we can offer an employee. So that would be my example, Rohit.
No, absolutely. And I think both of you touched upon technology, at least post-pandemic or during that time. At least we've seen both in terms of usage, which is like either 50% or more kind of increase in usage of the platform, and the number of use cases in terms of I want to automate this, I want to make this available, this data, this thing, that has changed significantly. And I think that's the direction most organizations are going towards. There are a set of questions, actually, very, very interesting ones. I don't know, we'll have time to catch up on all of them. But one of the consistent themes that's coming across, and Sankalp, because you see multiple organizations, it'll be good to hear from you on this, is while you provide or you give all the enablers to the managers on, okay, whether it is data, whether it is every other thing that is needed for them to do the employee experience piece, transaction pieces, etc., how do you incentivize them to do it? All right. Or to put it more crudely, is there a carrot and a stick that will work, or a stick that will work better on, while there is data, how do you ensure the managers are actually using that data, thinking about experience of employees, right? Making choice between business, and these are all the questions that are coming in. So I'm mixing up 3-4 things, but making a choice between what is business critical versus what is people critical. So some of those, it's very dependent on the business leaders and the managers. So what are the things that you've seen play out or work in those scenarios?
I think number one, there's no magic formula for it, right? It takes time. It takes, like with any other change, it takes significant leadership buy-in and initiative from the top. But a few things that we've seen work well. I think the number one is we need to educate managers very effectively on their role in driving the employee experience. Right. The reality is that if a person on the first person that an individual actually speaks to for any query, right? I want to know what is the leave policy. Maybe I've joined new, right? Or what is this? The first person that they end up talking to is actually the manager. It's very rare that they will go out to an HR person first, right? And I think, if we can help managers identify these kinds of touch points with employees and their role in actually providing that employee experience at these touch points, performance management, hiring, right? Not just for hiring even before people come and join your organization, right? There is a whole candidate pool that you are impacting by how you carry yourself and how they are treated, and that has a big role to play in how you attract talent and what your brand is as well, right? So I think really mapping and identifying and helping managers understand the employee touch points where they have a role to play in driving the employee experience, I think is a critical element, right? So I think that's number one, which is around awareness. Number two is really around capability, right? Now, I want to have a really good discussion with my people on performance, right? Maybe I don't know. Maybe this is my first time manager. Maybe I have only learned maybe I've had bad experiences in my career in terms of how my performance conversations played out, right? So how do I actually do this better, right? You're telling me to be an org evangelist when I do my interview, or when I interview a candidate, right? What am I supposed to say, right? So I think the second element is really around capability, right? You spoke also about carrot and stick, and I think that's where some of the third element comes in, right? Reality is that what gets measured gets done. And I think one thing that we've seen organizations do well is to include metrics around employee experience and engagement in manager scorecards and in leadership scorecards, right? And I think that's something which does push accountability on managers to really look at, what am I doing differently? So you can, there's a lot of very good measurement systems out there right now, which can give you data at a fairly micro level, touching both employee touch points, but also by manager, and therefore specific areas which need focus. And therefore including some of these elements within the specific manager scorecard, and then rolling that up and then looking at it from a leadership scorecard perspective can really help with pushing accountability. So I think 3 levels to it. One is around awareness, right? As a manager or as a leader, what are the touch points where I have an opportunity to actually create an employee experience, and why that's important? I think there's enough data right now to support that a differentiated employee experience has significant impact on business outcomes and customer outcomes, right? So I think the first is around awareness, around what are those touch points, what can I do differently? Second is a little bit around capability, right? So how do I actually become better? Maybe as a manager, I want to be better, right? But maybe I just have some of those skills missing. And the third is the incentivization, or the sort of pushing people to actually take accountability, and some of the scorecarding stuff that I talked about can be quite useful in that.
Rohit, just want to add there, and I think Sankalp touched upon it, and I can give an example that, as they say, whatever you throw light on shines, or whatever you measure gets done. So, in one of the organizations, we had a beautiful thing called a talent development index, and we had business units. So each of the business heads. So there was a nice dashboard which used to get circulated every quarter, and I can tell you at very senior leadership levels, the business unit heads used to take it very seriously, and it was top down. And that talent development index used to be actually a score, which was a derivative of a lot of people, this thing. So which was either around how are they doing on engagement? What kind of internal talent movement is happening? What kind of retention is happening on your high potential? What is your voluntary attrition? So there was a gamut of 6 or 7 areas, and it would be KPI driven, and there would be, at the end of it, for all 13 business units, there would be a dashboard which would be circulated nationally, that this is how each of the units is doing, and the top 2 or 3 would get rewarded at large forums. So it's really about creating, as Sankalp said, obviously it is about capability, definitely, because you can't throw them into it and not being aware. Like during hybrid working, one of the things that managers have come back to us has been that something we take for granted, right? So suddenly having performance dialogues on a telephone was not as easy, right? So this virtual training program that we created for virtual managers actually focused on engaging with their employees in a virtual environment, focusing on productivity. How do you manage productivity in a virtual environment, and how to communicate with empathy and listening skills in a virtual environment? So that really came to the forefront. But something like this talent development index, I would recommend that everyone should do it. If you have multiple units, multiple, even managers, like we also in our annual awards, and that's a more simpler one where we look at some of the best people, managers, and I'm sure a lot of organizations do that. But talent development index is something that I thought really worked very, very well, and you could see the outcomes of that.
Yeah, maybe Praveen, I think one part of the question which is come from Annesley is around how do you ensure, and a lot of the metrics element of it is a postmortem, but how do you ensure the pro business versus pro people kind of choices that people make in the business side of things, right? When you make business heads and managers, I mean, democratization or democracy has its own flaws, right? So what are the things that we need to keep in mind, and especially as triggers or escalation points, right? And this needs to be dealt with immediately, versus obviously in the postmortem, some of this will come out very clearly, right? The best people managers and the not so good people managers will come out in the KRAs and surveys, but how do you solve for this while you're trying to give a lot of enablement to the managers?
Yeah, so I would answer this slightly philosophically also, because it has to get embedded in the culture. Okay, when I'm saying that, typically the sweet spot of business goal and employee aspiration is something world over the organizations are seeking, but that sweet spot is a sweet spot in itself that not many organizations are able to get to that in the realistic manner, right? Either they are tilted towards business, and at times they can be tilted towards employees, and that fine balance that needs to get established. At times, you may not be able to really get to that. And this so-called business goals and employee aspiration is not a stagnant variable. It's an ever-moving variable. Okay, business goals keep changing because the modern day is like that. And even employee aspirations, it keeps changing. And so how do you keep looking at that sweet spot is a actual, a challenge for, the organizations and even HR. Now, a couple of things that, what we have done at India First Life is what I can share, because again, lot of thought had gone inside this because we were seeking to find out that sweet spot. And even eventually we have done something which we possibly feel, at least in times to come, will hold us in good stead. One is the fact that if you're a manager, we would want the manager also to contribute, as a individual contributor. Okay, we don't want managers to only manage people. Now, what we realize is that if the manager is only responsible to manage people and individually the person is not contributing, then the manager is not really able to understand the problems of the subordinates and not really be able to create that value for the individual. And there is a lot of what you call, the so-called empowerment, and they say the so-called removal of bottleneck doesn't happen. So what we say is typically, even if you're a manager, at least about 20 to 25% time, you also need to be an individual contributor and you need to deliver something to the role. And that gets captured as a part of the KPI. And, there he can't go to his team, he or she can't go to his team and, get the things done from his or her team. He has to individually do it. So we feel that this creates, a sense of understanding, a sense of, really getting to know, saying that what it takes for you to individually contribute. And also the fact that the other 75 or 80% times has to manage people, it works beautifully well. The second piece is that, for example, if I'm talking about training, many times it is asked, saying that, tell me what is the return on investment of a training, right? So, for example, all my trainers, they have an ROI or a KPI matrice, wherein they say, I have kept this, that productivity of the sales guys is a direct KPI of my trainers. So right from content curation to delivery to the self-paced learning journey, which I just talked about, essentially all of these things should result into end productivity when it comes to the sales channel. If it doesn't, then all the activities that we would have done possibly has not resulted into the goal that we are seeking or we are trying to achieve. So, and even for the sales guys, the training is a part of their KPI, because I just read one Q&A there, that input parameters which I talked about, it is a part of the goal setting process. So they are supposed to, they can't just come and tell us that, we have got the output, dhanda ho raha hai, don't ask how the business is happening. So we would question them, saying that the business may have happened, but that may not be a sustainable model. You need to keep in mind the input parameters for the business to be sustainable. So that is a part of the performance matrice. And, one of the other aspects that what we have tried and done is the fact that no longer we are telling our employees that the organization will decide the career for you. Okay. What we have gone and told our employees is that we will be able to create a career framework. Now we are calling it as a career kundali. So we are saying that, okay, we have picked up competence, whether behavioral or functional competence of every role. We are actually showcasing it to you. We are telling you that the skill set that you have, by the virtue of the fact that you are in the role for a number of years, and maybe you are in one particular stream for a number of years, what are the other roles which is very closer to your role, which you can move on to that role in case if you want to. Okay. And we are actually giving an option to an individual, again, democratizing to an individual. And we are telling the individual that please don't ask how your career is going to move. These are various options available to you to pick and choose from. Either you can remain as a specialist and keep growing vertically, or else if you feel that, okay, you want to kind of become a better professional, have an organic growth, these are some of the roles that would be available to you. And so much so that suppose all those roles which are very closer to the role that you would be handling in terms of the competency, and the person would say that, let's assume, I'll give an example. If somebody in HR professional says that I want to get into finance, the competencies would be very different. But the person, if he comes back and says that I don't mind willing to spend that extra time, extra energy for me to acquire those competencies in finance, I am creating a career path for an individual. I'm saying that, yes, you can get onto that role, not now, maybe 24 months down the line, but I'm capturing your aspiration and I'm creating a framework for you to get to that position in future. And so these are some of the things what we have done. So everybody is aware that the entire ecosystem is responsible for people's success. And even managers are responsible for their team success and people around them. And collectively, we have created this so-called culture, which talks about empowerment, which talks about meritocracy, etc. And again, democratization is the key. We are not imposing anything onto people. We are creating a broad framework, leaving it to an individual for their choices. And then we say that now you decide how you want to run with it. So far it has worked well for us. I'm not, kind of commenting that it will be the same in the near future. But again, agility, as you mentioned, Rohit, to begin with, HR also needs to be agile, and depending upon the situation of the environment, we'll have to create new structures and processes for the organization to be agile as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I did want to, I think the building of the competency framework and creating your own learning paths and journeys. Again, this is something that I've seen very common nowadays compared to what it used 1.5, 2 years ago, because we had built this into the product. And I'm just talking in terms of the usage of the product on these elements, right? Creating competency frameworks, libraries, and doing that. But Sankalp, coming to you on this, and there is a question on skills taxonomy. Again, a very hot topic around internal, external recruiting, right? Whether it is through a competency framework or whether it's through a skills taxonomy, right? And how do you develop those skills? How do you list those skills down? What are the skill set, right? Any trends you are seeing in organizations, especially on this, where, and Praveen's example was great, but in terms of additional things that people are doing, right, or different sectors are doing in terms of how they're running this.
Lots of work happening there, right? I think in many ways, there was this meme doing the rounds on, I think sometime last year, right, when COVID hit, said what led to digital transformation in your organization, and there were many options, and the final one selected was actually COVID-19. So the reason I'm saying this is, I think that has accelerated this whole thing of looking at skills of the future much more drastically, right? I think and maybe I can just talk through some examples, right, in terms of what we're seeing organizations do. Significant focus on what the world is going to be like in 3, 4, 5 years time, right? So I know of fossil fuel companies who realize that they need to get into the renewable space, have proactively sought to identify 70 to 80 new skills or skill areas that they will need proficiency on, have built anywhere upwards of 1,000 modules of content, which is now available for people to actually take and work on and sort of develop their skills, right? So I think what is happening right now is a lot of time being spent on actually looking at where is our business going to go in a few years' time. The fact that we got disrupted almost overnight about a year and a half back, right? And many of us were not ready for it, right? And there's no shame in admitting that many of us were not ready for it. So we don't want to go through that process all over again. So where is our business going to go in 4, 5, 6 years' time? What is it that we need to do? What skills will therefore be needed at that point? And how do we actually put in place learning in the flow of work, which people can actually learn even as they go about doing their day-to-day jobs, which will help us bridge the skill gaps for the future, right? We've seen what's happening with the Great Resignation, with a number of people exiting. It is hard to recruit talent, right? I mean, especially for specific skill set areas. I think organizations realize that more acutely now and are very much focused on how can we actually up our game so that we can upskill and retain and sort of deal with it, as opposed to necessarily looking at a situation where we have to hire from the outside, right? What kind of skills are becoming more and more relevant? I think on the technical side, it's very much org, industry, that dependent, right? But there is definitely much more focus on what we call human behaviors, right? Or the humanistic side of things in terms of creativity and innovation, emotional intelligence, the ability to collaborate, right? The ability to work empathetically with others, right? What are my inherent human capabilities? How do I bring them to the fore? And I think there is significant focus in organizations on identifying, on sort of developing some of these more inherent human capabilities, because they are seeing this as being much more, if you have this, you can pick up the other areas and you can find ways to learn and grow yourself as well as your team.
That's very helpful, Sankalp, actually nicely put as well. I think Reena, specifically coming to you again, in terms of HR role, and you've seen different organizations, right? While there is change happening and all functions are actually adapting to it, right? Do you see HR also adapting to it or actually driving the change across other functions, right? Like what role should HR play in all of this, right? Because right, one side there is democratization and we are saying we'll give you play this role, right? Like and which was traditionally looked at as an HR role,
Yeah.
right? But on the other side there is around there's so much change happening. What is HR doing on all aspects, right? Like are they the change agent in the organizations who's building that agility, who's building all of this, or they are more solving for the function as much?
No, and I think I touched upon it earlier, right, Rohit? So one thing is very clear that HR, when we talk about the managers being the HR practitioners and we actually being the facilitators, right, which is fine, because you're also telling managers to be the coaches for their team members, to be their mentors, to be able to guide them through their journey as far as organization is concerned. And that's where the role of HR comes, that while you have empowered the managers, who is the coach and mentor to them? So while they're traversing this journey of a coach or a mentor to their team members, HR has to be strongly beside them. You cannot at any point of time, and especially in this fast changing world, right? And I think again this pandemic threw that very clearly, right? Why suddenly HR became a very, very important function in all the organizations, and that was because when this change came, and remember earlier I said it is not just about reacting to change, it is also about ability to preempt change, and that's where there is so much of work today happening, that in every organization post pandemic, how is that going to impact your industry and your organization? I think that's the role of HR, to be the ability to be able to see through for next 3 to 4 years, whether it is in terms of skills, whether it is in terms of capability, whether what is the kind of talent pool that you're looking at. Praveen touched upon the gig economy, but really which parts of my organization it is there. So building a strategy, and again, there will be no one size fits all. Every organization, every industry will have to build their own this thing, and that's where HR will play a very, very important role. So change agent, yes, that is today one of the most critical role, but you cannot just participate in the process, you have to lead the process. As an HR leader, that is what I would say is a very important this thing, and also ensuring. And I saw one question around business versus people, but really I think all our experience has been organizations which were very strong on people practices, which were, they didn't have to suddenly do a change immediately and say pandemic stuck and now we are going to care for people, now we are going to care for their well-being, etc., etc. Organizations which already had very strong foundations on that were able to traverse this journey in a much smoother way. Everyone ultimately made it, but organizations who could respond to this situation in a very positive or a very smooth way were the organizations who had that already as a part of the culture. So that's the role and responsibility of an HR leader, to ensure what come may, that the focus on people and the people agenda is a very strong one, and it is always there at the table as far as organizations are concerned. So that's what I would say that HR's role in change. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. It does, Reena. And playing the role of a coach or a mentor further while you democratize and you're enabling that, I think is definitely something.
It's very important. You can't leave them on, because they also are looking up to someone to be able to, to bounce off their thoughts or where they're struggling, being able to, and that's where HR's role comes in.
No, I think a lot of managers will complain going out of this panel though. They'll be like, you're making them individual contributors, coaches, mentors, employee experience, and deliver as well. But I think it's a big responsibility, and I think all of them nicely interwoven will be the greatest outcome.
Yeah, but Rohit, my firm belief is that you can't push these things to people, right? There is always that factor of what's in it for me, and if you're able to show that what's in it for me to the manager, that how is he going to benefit from it? Obviously, it's a gradual process; it won't happen overnight. Then only they will really embrace it very positively. I don't think only push would work there. Yeah.
And Praveen, I think two specific questions, and please, anybody else, please feel free to butt in, right? One around social media, and there was a question there, like, as an organization, do you use social media for any of these engagements, conversations, etc.? Right. So, I mean, any of your experience that has come up, that could be good to understand. And then I'll come to the second one.
Yeah, of course. I mean, whether we like it or not, social media is everywhere, right? And for me, actually, employer branding plays a far bigger role. I mean, I may have prejudices while making this statement, but still I will make it, that employer branding will be, does have a far more reach than, the company branding itself. Okay. For example, be it Tata's or Aditya Birla, for me, they are known for their employer brand more than the services and the products that they are offering. Okay. And to a larger extent, what happens is that all the employees, alumni of the companies also become the brand ambassadors of the company, right? And how do you make sure that what you do within the organization is actually cascaded down to people outside who possibly are not associated to the company at all? And there is only one way to do it today. It's either advertising, marketing, and the medium would be social media, right? So we have an intranet, we use Yammer, which is an internal social media kind of a thing. We do use external social media, be it LinkedIn, be it Instagram, Facebook. So it's a communication that we do to reach en masse. The communication there are fireflies through our employees who are the brand ambassadors who actually take this and take it ahead, because they are the ones who are experiencing and consuming what is there to offer to them. And so it becomes very, very critical in that aspect. And companies like ours, which intend to get listing in a few years from now, social media presence is quintessential critical for us. And we don't want to be known as a company which is doing fantastically well in terms of business, but may not be that great in terms of people, processes, or culture. So we want to actually make sure that both of these areas are taken care of. So in the background, whatever we do, we also would like to showcase it in some manner, and it also gives us a perspective that when you put something out there, you also get responses. Some are positive, some are not so positive. So we have to kind of take it forward, the not so positive responses, and think about it. Is there a requirement for us to do something very different? I see I have a Twitter handle, and I keep posting something or the other, which is very, very official. And suddenly I get a response back. I would have posted something on HR and I would have got a response back that the insurance policy is not great at all. So suddenly, I start saying that, okay, I have posted something on HR, and a response from the social media customer outside is saying that, what are you talking? Your product itself is not that great. And how are you saying that your HR processes are good? So it gives us a time to introspect, for us to kind of look at it. And we take all of these things very seriously. We try to implement some of those things, what we feel needs to happen. So yes, so we are there day in and day out in terms of social media presence.
And before we get to, I think, parting thoughts, we are almost on top of the hour, and I'll go quick question for each of you. One good example of employee engagement initiative in this hybrid context that you've done, you've seen, you've experienced yourself, you've enabled yourself, would be super good to know. People to take away.
Should I go first?
Anyone?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have these recognition, programs that kind of rewards performance, rewards value exhibition by employees, etc. Right? After the pandemic, most of the times it used to be a physical, get together, etc. Right? So post pandemic, of course, or during the pandemic, we were saying that how do we create this recognition? Because recognition, along with the senior leaders of the organization is really something where people actually look forward to interact with an MD and CEO or a deputy CEO, etc. So we kind of thought about it and we made everything virtual. And the beauty that we, kind of realized was that in a virtual medium, even the families are there, right? So imagine a situation that you are in the confinement of your home, you are getting recognized and you are getting rewarded, and the recognition is coming through an MD and CEO, and actually, or a deputy CEO or senior leaders, and speaking, about the person. So the entire family gets attached to that. There is an emotional connect that gets developed. It's a proud moment for the employee. So we did that and we were able to pull it off. And, so it again, that thought came from all this, things that we see on TV, be it India's Got Talent or, some of those shows. So we exactly created something like that. And it was a virtual kind of an affair, but very well accepted and recognized and appreciated by people. So that would be a wow moment for me in terms of an employee engagement activity that we did through a virtual medium during the COVID.
Beautiful. Very nice idea. Reena, any
Yeah, I can share a couple of them. One, again, related to recognition. One thing which really was appreciated very well by our employees, and actually all they kind of recognize that on social media, that our top awardees were actually sent a personal, their families were sent a personalized letter signed by the CEO, thanking them for their support, that it was a tough year. And during this tough year, while employees were managing their personal challenges and they have come out as stars and couldn't have happened without your support. I think that was, and really, truly, it came down from the heart. And that was something which actually the reactions went beyond our expectations. We didn't, this was something we launched because we felt it from the heart and we sent it, but the reactions were amazing. I think a couple of them, we launched a COVID leave, which was received very well. So employees suffering from COVID, we gave them over and above leave. So well-being was a core theme, right, which we really looked at, and everything we did around that was taken up so well by the employees. Even smallest of thing, like we had on the day 23rd March is when the lockdown was declared and the pandemic last year was. And I think 1st or 2nd April, we actually launched our Doctor on Call initiative where employees had access to free consultation. And not just at that point of time, more so in the second wave. When the second wave hit, the employees, can't tell you the kind of overwhelming response that we got, and people were so thankful and appreciative that when they couldn't, because second wave, almost every employee in the organization was getting impacted, either because of their immediate family or extended family or friends. So they were able to use the service, and it still gives me goosebumps when I think about it, the kind of response. So I think these are some of the things which really work well for us.
Sankalp, from you?
Yeah. So I think what Reena said, right? That's really awesome. The stuff that organizations have done to manage health and mental well-being during the COVID crisis has been just phenomenal. And I think the organizations that have done it differentially have had a huge impact on employee experience, right? But two things that I just wanted to call out. One, very basic but very, very effective, is manager check-ins with colleagues, right? It's not easy to do, but I've seen managers who have had regular check-ins with colleagues to just check on health, well-being, how you're doing, what can you do differently, just those transitioning. Because what happened is, in the physical world, you often ran into each other in the office, right? So you could have conversations that you can't have anymore in the virtual world, or you couldn't have in the virtual world, right? So I think something as basic as those who managers that kept at it very religiously, I think have seen the benefits of that, right? And so it sounds like a fairly basic thing to do, but it has had, I think, a lot of impact. The second is, and I want to be conscious in saying that I'm not positioning this as an employee engagement activity, but I think it has had a lot of impact on employee experience in organizations that have done it right. When the pandemic first hit, a lot of organizations cut back on managerial capability, leadership capability programs, right? Part of it was just that how do we do it in a virtual world? Part of it was obviously expense control, and there were other reasons as well. There were some who adapted quite quickly and invested and continued to invest throughout this process, right? They tried to take programs virtual. They kept up the investments, right? And I think I've seen the value that it has created in employees who are part of those programs. I have also seen firsthand how much they have appreciated this. And the fact that, despite tough times, despite difficult times, organizations have chosen to continue to invest in them. And I think this has also had a significant impact on employee experience. So again, I'm not at all suggesting that leadership development or learning and development should be an employee engagement initiative. It's not, absolutely not. But the commitment to it, does have a significant impact on employee experience.
No, I completely agree with Sankalp, and I think we also as leadership very clear, and it was because a part of our fabric of the organization, but how you conduct yourself as an organization during that time of crisis, you would be known by that for years by the employees. And if it comes naturally to the organization, then well and good. Otherwise, we should be very conscious of it. Completely agree.
Awesome. Cool. We are on top of the hour. Maybe one parting thought each on democratization and what you think folks on the call or the audience should take away, one key takeaway for them that they should look at, start implementing soon on the democratization front would be helpful. Maybe Praveen, you can go first.
Yeah, so we covered this, discussion. One thing is for sure that, it's going to be increasingly difficult to find how you are going to democratize your HR offerings to people because of the fact that hybrid work environment would come into picture, maybe gig economy would come into the picture. Of course, we have baby boomer generation, Y, Z, millennials also operating from the same ecosystem, and the requirements for everybody would be very, very different. But end of the day, if you go with a thought saying that, okay, I will offer something that should be acceptable to all, it becomes very difficult for people to get the same kind of an experience. So we have to be cognizant about it, that it is not going to be an easy journey, but end of the day, we cannot ignore or not think about how to democratize things, how to make it personalized, maybe hyper personalized also. While doing it, couple of things that you need to keep in mind is that you will find roadblocks in the system. There would be a mindset which would be resistant to change, and it may flow from the top. So HR's responsibility to influence, leaders, and thereafter, once there is an effective buy-in from leaders, it can get onto the last mile. The second roadblock could be staying agile with technology. Okay, it is like everybody needs to be aware that they need to keep abreast of all the technology landscapes that would be available in the respective functions, in sub-functions, etc. And the organization should be ready to understand and invest, because you cannot be behind time. You have to be ahead of time, because a lot of this democratization can be delivered only if you have an agile technology with you. Otherwise, at times it becomes very difficult, especially if people are not operating from offices. Okay, so how do you make sure that all of these offerings reach the employees? So keep that in mind. And as I mentioned, that because of this intergenerational collaboration, okay, there would be culture which would be slightly a mixture of many. So, bringing in some kind of a people processes to trigger positive thoughts in all of these generations is something which is a constant thought that needs to, get in. And my invite to all the HR, folks would be, keep these three so-called impediments in mind, but don't, kind of get bogged down by this. You have to personalize, democratize, and find out a way via medium, considering the organization's culture, how to get there. And that would be, my humble, kind of suggestion to everybody.
Thank you, and I think I like the digital mindset thing that Reena talked about as a competency in itself. I think that's the technology part. Reena, from you.
Yeah, I would say, I think last thoughts, democratization of HR is the way to go. For that, the HR leaders should build up their skills around influencing, around agility, compassion, digital mindset, adapt or build their skills on that area so that they have become effective change leaders to drive this democratization. You can't say I have democratized HR and leave it on everyone. You ultimately will have to still lead the process. So build on your skills. That's what I would say.
Yeah, and Sankalp.
Hey, thanks. Two quick thoughts. One, just going back to that conversation around business versus employee, and clearly it's a tough choice, but overwhelmingly organizations answered that question during the pandemic by choosing people. But it took an external stimulus and it took an external event to get them to answer that question. Can that question be answered? Yes, it will need to be answered at various forums at different levels. The only way to do it is to define your non-negotiables. Health, security, whatever else it is, right? So I think that question can be answered, but yes, it is very, very hard. And we've already answered it in the past during the pandemic. Second, I think historically there's been a lot of talk around, does HR have a seat at the table, etc., right? I think one thing that we've learned in the pandemic is forget seat at the table. HR has been at the head of the table to drive business continuity, right? So I think the opportunity, it's well and truly established. And the way forward is to use that seat at the head of the table to democratize processes, to drive hyper-personalization towards really pushing the agenda on a more personalized and a better employee experience.
Thank you so much for being such great speakers and panelists. I have learned a lot myself as well. And thanks so much, audience. I think we couldn't cover all the questions, so sorry for that. I tried my best to get in, but there were such great thoughts in this conversation that I did want to get into some concrete examples and detailing there. Over to you, Pooja.
No, thank you so much, Rohit, for engaging with the panel on such interesting topic, and we really had a very, very interesting exchange of thoughts. So I really appreciate all of you bringing your expertise and experience around the table and engaging in such fruitful, constructive, and open exchanges. Viewers, I hope a lot of ground was covered and you're walking up with great takeaways. Thank you, Praveen, Reena, Sankalp, and Rohit from Team ETHR World.